everybody to another lesson of Bucklefish. Thank you once again for joining this lesson. This is quite an important lesson because we are going to be talking about Excel functions. Okay, so make sure you have looked at that video on formulas, the very first one that you should be looking at on formulas. Okay, and also make sure that you do pause the video just to make your notes and pause the screen just to get all that information in. Okay, so today's objectives are, we're going to use common functions today, such as sum, average, min, and max functions. Okay, so we are going to focus on those four main functions. We're going to look at it with some examples, and awesome. It'll be great if you could create your own spreadsheet at the end and create your own data and functions. So that's what we got planned today. Let's take a quick look. So functions, what do we mean by it? We mean when we talk about functions, we are talking about a formula, because while formulas are manual expressions, if you remember from that first video, you'd start your formula off with equals E4 plus D4, enter. And then it mainly focuses on the calculations of multiply, divide, subtract, and add. Okay? So there's always going to be a place for formulas. You're always going to have to do formulas in Excel. It's just that when you think of functions, think of it as a built-in formula that already has a purpose. Okay, so it saves you time and saves you a lot of energy. Okay, so as it says there, functions are formulas. They do specific things, and it saves you time. Okay. So one example here is that, we could do a manual formula. Say we had some data in a spreadsheet and we wanted to add it all up. We can do A1 plus B1 plus C1 and so forth and press enter. We can spend all day adding up those cell references, or we can just go and get the function, the sum function, and specify the beginning cell address and the ending cell address, A1 to G1. And that will save you a lot of time. So that's just one example of how a function, why it's needed, why it's necessary. And there are many, many, many functions out there for you to get your teeth into. Some very complex ones. You have database functions, statistical functions, but we just want to introduce the subject of functions, and we want to go into that today. So the layout of a function, if we quickly take a look at this, is that one thing with a function is that you will always see the name of the function. So you'll always see equals and then the name of the functions. I mean, that could be min, max, if, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, COUNTIF. There are a whole range of different functions that could be. And what you'll find is that for the ones we are looking at today, there is a data range that this function is using, and that normally is inside of the brackets. So if you look at the brackets, there we call that a calculation or an argument that occurs inside the brackets. And indeed, some functions require many steps. We won't be going into that today, but if you look at the videos on if and VLOOKUP that I've done, you'll see that in those brackets there are multiple steps, and if that's the case, you can separate each bit by a comma. So, but this layout here is the basic structure of a function. All right, you just need to go get it and then press enter when you're done. So the functions we're going to be looking at, the four main ones, very briefly, we look at the sum function, and as it says up there, the sum function adds things up. Okay, so you can see this data here in the middle. The sum function is just going to add it up. You can see from the argument, it starts off from B2 to D5, and when I press enter, it's just going to press enter, and that will be very quick and easy. And in the real world, you will have a lot of cell addresses to add up. This is just a very small snapshot of it. Now, just a quick side note on that one. Sometimes one of the main things in this video I want you to take with you is that there's a time to use a function and a time to use a formula. Okay, and you've got to be able to differentiate from the two. Now, I can say to you, what if I just wanted to add the 7 and the 8 up in this data? Obviously, I'm not going to use a function for that. Obviously, I need to use a specific formula. I need to do this one here, equals C2 plus D4, and then press enter. That's the only way I'm going to add those two cells up. Okay, and why I sort of mentioned that as well is because some, you know, for your exam, those of you watching this video for the exam, do not do these two examples you see on the screen. You will lose marks, okay? Don't do these either. Don't do them if you're just adding, subtracting, dividing, or multiplying a couple of cell addresses. And certainly don't do these layouts. So you don't do, if you're just adding a couple cell addresses, there's no need to do sum, and then there's no need to use the sum function and then add it in the brackets. You need to leave the built-in functions for data ranges, and certainly don't do equals in brackets C2 plus D4. There's no need for it. It's totally unnecessary. You just need C2 plus D4. All right, and that will certainly lose you marks. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, so we know that the sum function adds up to a total, and let's take a look at the other one. And so by now you'll get the idea of what's happening. You have the name of the function. So the max function finds the highest number. So it will scan this data and it will select 8 as the highest number when we press enter. So that's your max function. You've got your min function as it stands there. Min stands for minimum, and it will find the smallest number, which is the 2 in that data set. Okay, so just bear that in mind. We'll take a look at another one. The average function is another commonly used one, and these four functions are some of the most common ones out there today. So the average function finds a typical number in data, or it finds the mean number. So this is also a maths area. I mean, we can to find the mean average of these numbers, we can do a formula where we add up all these cell addresses, but it's going to waste time because there is a function that does that for us called the average function, and it will find the typical number in that list. Okay. So let's have a look at some quick questions here before we go into some examples on these functions. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Use this function to find the lowest temperature for Greece. Okay, the lowest temperature would be your min. Use this function to find the typical temperature for Jamaica throughout the year. You will need the average function. Use this function to add up the combined temperatures for Greece, France, and Jamaica for May. You need the sum functions because that adds things up. Use this function to find the highest temperature of France for the year. So we need the max function. And finally, use this function to count the cells with data in them for all countries throughout the year. And that's one, it's quite popular. We didn't look at it, but as it says there, what that will do will count function will count any cells with stuff in it. Okay, so there you go, the 5 main functions there for you guys. And what we'll do next, we'll take a look at some practical examples of how to get this done. Okay, everyone, so for this bit here, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the 5 we're going to look at 5 basic functions here in our community food store. So what I'll do, we'll go into where we can find that, and I like to go into the AutoSum button on the editing group and just scroll down to the button next to it. Now these 5 functions here are the most common ones, and that is why you see them in Excel when you do the drop down box. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click in the cell where we want to find out the total. So we want to find out the total sales for these items from Monday through to Wednesday. So what we'll do, we'll click into the cell. Step 1, we click into the cell where the answer is going. Then we're going to go get our function, sum. And then you can see it automatically tries to grab a data range for us, B3 to B6. But obviously that's not right, is it? Now you can manually go and enter that in from B3 to D5, or you can just click and drag. Okay, and that's all you got to do. It's very easy to do these type of functions. Just make sure you grab your data, and you can see in your formula bar up here as well. It's all there. And then press enter. And that is our total. The next one up, the average, we click into the cell. We get the function, average, and highlight our cells, and then just press enter. Okay, now that saves us quite a lot of time if we were to go in and do a mean maths calculation. It would certainly take a lot of time. Now, maximum number, we know, well, we can see that the highest number here is £97, but we can go in and do it anyway, because in the real world, spreadsheets are huge, and that stuff you don't normally see anyway. So we highlight it, maximum, and then we can go ahead, do a minimum one very quickly. Let's go min, highlight your cells, click enter, and the last option is count. So we'll go in via the functions list and click on count numbers. Okay. Now there are two count functions. There's a count A function that will also count alphabetical entries. So if at the moment this count function will only count numerical values, the count A function will also count alphanumeric characters or the alphabetical entry. So letters basically. So that is the 5 functions we looked at there, guys. I hope you um, made notes on that one. So also, you know, as time goes on, you will need to study and learn more functions, and you just simply go to more functions up here and click on, search for the function you need. You can go into categories and you can see all the different categories of functions. You got financial, date and time, math, statistical, lookup and reference, database, text. They're all different kinds of functions depending on what problem you're having. You can go and get a function for it. We just looked at the 5 basic ones you need to know if you're beginning in spreadsheets. Okay. So thanks for watching, everybody. Before we go, I'll just quickly leave you with the 4 steps to add in those functions. So depending on the functions that we looked at, you would simply go through to a few steps. And the first one would be to select your cell where the answer is going to go into, where the function is going to go. Then you get your function, select your data range, and then just press enter. Okay? Just make sure you understand that. And obviously, the further on you progress with functions, there are different techniques for getting those functions in. So thanks you once again for looking at this video.